Students have studied 12, 13 years in their home country, and they're ready to do something different. They're ready to see the world.
Hello, and welcome to our brand new podcast, The Study Social. My name is Rachel, and I'm the Creative Content Manager here at On Campus. We are an international education provider, and we specialise in providing programmes for international students to help them reach their dream university. We're starting off with a series exploring everything you need to know about starting a new chapter of your life as an international student. Right from the moment you get on the plane and arrive in a different country, to making friends from different backgrounds, and even some things you might not have thought about yet, such as dealing with homesickness and tips on studying. We like to think we know a thing or two about being an international student, and we've got lots of fantastic guests lined up ready to share their stories and expertise. Today we've got 4 guests on the podcast. Mariam, who is an on-campus London student, Caroline, who is a Centre Director at On-Campus Paris, and Brian and Azumi, who are the Centre Director and Student Support at On-Campus Boston. Firstly though, let's hear from some students about why they decided to move abroad to study.
I used to come here when I was a kid. I was always dreaming about studying here and living here and exploring the city. Honestly, since that, it was like my number one goal in life.
I like the environment, I like the laws. It's conducive environment for study, and it has showed over the years interest in the study and development of the young ones.
I love the weather because Singapore is extremely hot and humid, and being in a cold country might be a bit sad for others, but to me it's paradise.
Mariam studied at On Campus London in 2017 before progressing to Queen Mary University of London and graduating in 2020 with a first-class degree in medical genetics. She now works with me in the On Campus Marketing Department as a marketing and recruitment consultant, whilst also studying for a Master's in Translational Health Sciences at the University of Oxford. I spoke to Mariam about how she found moving from Dubai to the UK to study. Hi Mariam, welcome to our very first episode of The Study Social. This week's episode is focusing on what it's like for students to move to a new country. So had you ever been to the UK before you started your studies?
Actually, I've never been to the UK before my foundation year, so it was my first time. But I did hear a lot about the UK and London specifically from, my friends and family members who have visited the UK.
Did you get any guidance before moving about what to expect and things like what to pack?
Yes, so I remember I actually received pre-arrival emails from the center. So I was getting them on weekly basis 6 weeks before I arrived to the center. And it was things on, what they recommend me to pack and what to get. And I think these were really useful just because you kind of get advice from, the experts. I remember getting advice on transportation, from the airport to my accommodation, how to open a bank account, and even how to collect my BRP card, which I think were really useful and kind of guided me when I first arrived to the UK.
That's great. So they really kind of took you step by step through all those things that you'd need before you start. That's good to know. And from your experience, what would these key things be to pack before you start? Like, what is it essential that you mustn't forget?
So obviously a bag for uni, laptop, pens, pencil case. I would say winter clothes, just because I remember I went in January. But I would say do not overpack, just because everything that is in your country, all the shops, you'll find them in the UK. So you don't even have to buy things from, your country and ship them with you, but rather just go to the UK, explore and buy the bits and pieces that you need.
I think it's really useful for students to know then that they don't need to kind of worry if they do forget something, because it is easily accessible and there's plenty of shops nearby where they can get anything that they need. I think that's reassuring. So what was your first day in the UK like?
My first day, it did not really feel real, just because you kind of every day you think about, moving to the UK and then suddenly you're there. So I was like, am I really here? I remember I went to meet my uncle who lives there, and we kind of roamed around central London. And as I said previously, it was in January, so I was freezing. And I remember I was like wearing 4 layers just because I'm not used to the cold at all. But I think it was a first good day, I would say.
It's nice to kind of make that clear to students that you do need to plan for all weathers, because whether it's the UK, Europe, or the US, they're all going to have completely different climates. So, yeah, make sure you check the temperature and pack accordingly. Thanks to Mariam for that insight into her experiences of moving abroad to study. We'll be hearing more from Mariam in some of the upcoming episodes. Next up, we're talking to Caroline Michel, who is the Centre Director at On Campus Paris, which is our newest centre and will open its doors to our very first students in a few weeks. I caught up with Caroline about what students can expect as they travel to France to study. Hi Caroline, thanks very much for joining us today for our very first episode of the Study Social. So in this episode, we're discussing what it's like to move to a new country for a student. So firstly, what do you think makes a student want to move to study abroad in the first place?
I think there are lots of reasons. Perhaps their parents studied abroad themselves. Maybe the student has a passion of some sort, maybe for music or fashion or some other hobby, and that they can easily access that somewhere else other than their own home country. Others may realise that by studying abroad, they'll gain confidence and independence more quickly, maybe learn a new language and experience a new culture.
So there's lots of reasons there, really. And specifically, I guess, what support do you offer to students who might be worried about travelling to a new country?
I think that the unknown is always a bit scary. So our job is to provide a lot of information to students, particularly in the last few weeks as they prepare to travel to France. So we send information about what to expect on arrival, what to pack, what the weather will be like, what will happen in the first few days when they get to Paris, and also let them know that there's a support structure and a welfare office, so that the students can have a chat with our staff about anything that's going to bother them, or simply if they have a question. I had a student ask me a couple of years ago what a waste paper bin was and what it was for and how to use it, because they'd never seen one in their own home before. It made me realise that there are just no silly questions and that we're here to help the students succeed academically, but also to feel at home as quickly as possible in France.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because obviously there's going to be so many cultural differences or even just language differences. And I think it's important for students to know that they can ask whatever they need to do. And it's the perfect time to do it before and during this sort of move and change in their life. So that's really good to know that there's so much information that they'll be able to receive. So in terms of documents, what do students need to sort out before they even get on their flight to move?
There's actually quite a long list of things. Students need to make sure that their passport is valid for the entire length of their studies, plus 6 months at least. They need then to obtain a visa before they can jump on a plane to Paris. They also need to pay for their tuition fees, of course, book and pay for accommodation, and have insurance for the room that they've booked. They should prepare a file containing all the documents that they've received concerning their studies, their offer letter, etc. It's a good idea also to have a photocopy and a scan of their passport just in case it gets lost. It's much easier to replace a passport with a scanned or printed copy. They'll need a credit or debit card and, if possible, some euros in cash. Students also need to make sure that their mobile phone will work in France, even though they'll most likely buy a French SIM card on arrival. Students should remember also to pack a couple of plug adapters so that their computer and phone can be charged up easily. I think learning to cook a few tasty meals is a really useful thing to do before leaving home.
Yeah, that's such an important one. Well, everything you've said in the list is incredibly important, but we don't just want students to only think about those documents. There's also those sort of skills that will be really key for them to know, and a few hints of how to cook for themselves is very useful advice. So what should students do as soon as their flight lands or as soon as they arrive in Paris?
The very first thing that students should do is to phone home. They need to let their families know that they've arrived and that they're safe and they're well. Then they need to show all the documents that the immigration police are going to ask for, such as passports, admissions letters, proving that they're going to study at On Campus Paris. Once they've done all of that, the students should probably withdraw some cash from an ATM so that they have some euros to pay for food and also perhaps a taxi or a bus. Students can pre-book a taxi from the airport so that they can get to their accommodation, and how to do this is in our pre-arrival guide.
So, what's something students should do to start their new adventure as a Parisian?
Oh my, where to start? I think students should be tourists for a while when they arrive in Paris and do all the touristy things like going to the top of the Eiffel Tower, taking a bateau mouche down the Seine, eating French food, or just simply sitting in the park and watch the world go by. And they'll quickly adapt to the French way of life and hopefully really enjoy being part of such a vibrant and beautiful, diverse city.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Caroline. It's really good to hear all about what students are going to experience when they arrive in Paris. Our final interview for today's episode is with Azumi, who is the Student Support Officer at On Campus Boston, and Brian, who is the Centre Director at On Campus Boston. I spoke to them both about the support that students can expect right from the moment that they land in the US. So what can a student expect in their first few hours or first day of arriving in Boston?
So, students maybe feel excited or nervous arriving to a new country, but we make sure to keep them busy and welcomed. Once they go through the immigration and luggage claims and are ready to leave for the On-Campus Boston Center, they should inform On-Campus Boston staff that they are on their way to the center. Students will be greeted by On-Campus Boston staff upon arrival. We will go to the public safety office to make a student ID card and receive their dorm keys for their move-in. And lastly, we orient them to the campus so the student know where to eat or where to find something if they need. And student may feel excited or overwhelmed for the first few hours of their new academic journey, but that's why we are here for. So we're here to support them.
It sounds like the students don't need to be worried at all and that they're going to be supported through all of that process every step of the way. So that's really good to hear. So what do you think is different starting as an international student as opposed to a home student?
One of the big things is independence. You're very far away from home. Most of the domestic students can travel, back and forth from the campus very easily, or they're very familiar with U.S. culture. But now you're very far away from home. But there's also independence that goes along with it. Some students, they need to be prepared if they feel homesick. One of the great things about the On-Campus Boston program is we're almost like family to these students. They have questions, they have concerns. We're always available for them and to really support them, especially when we understand the international experience, and we're there to, do our best to help them get over the rough times. Because when you first arrive, there's a lot of excitement. But then you realize, wow, I'm here by myself, meeting all new people. It's a really big change, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but not to worry. We have a full staff of trained, experienced advisors to really help you through that process. And we're a great resource for these students to make sure they feel comfortable and they can be successful.
I think it sounds like these students are really going to learn not just the academic side of things, but the life skills to become real independent people in a much more advanced way, I guess, than you would necessarily if you were to stay in your home country. So let's talk a bit about Boston now. Why do you think Boston is a perfect study destination for international students?
Well, Boston is really unique. In the ancient world, when people wanted to learn and have higher learning, they all went to Athens in Greece. So Boston is kind of Athens of the New World. We have so many great universities here in the small, it's a small city. It's much smaller than in New York or Los Angeles. And not just any universities. We have Boston University. We have Harvard. We have MIT. It's really a university, really a college town. Great restaurants. No matter what food you like, you can find it in the city. And, myself and Azumi are here to really help students say, I'm looking for a certain particular cuisine. We can help you find it, and we can give you the directions and make sure that you're able to get there. And that's some of the best bonding that students have is when they go out together to these restaurants and they can really bond over food and really share their experiences.
Food is so important, not just to try some new culture, some new food, but something to remind you of home, I think is really nice. And the food scene in Boston is really impressive. So I think that should be something that students should look forward to when they come and study over in Boston. Thank you very much both. It's been great to speak to you both today.
Thanks, Rachel. Really great to be here. We look forward to welcoming students here to Boston. Hope to see you soon.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in to the next episode of the Study Social, where we'll be discussing student accommodation and settling into your new city. Follow us on Instagram at Study Social Pod, and find us on YouTube as well at the Study Social Podcast.